On today's episode of the Cryptoverse. Speaking of real-world Ethereum apps, yesterday I had a chat with Paul Worrall from Zonafide. Hardware wallets are the only way to truly store your cryptocurrency securely. Ledger provide a range of devices to suit all budgets and preferences. Check out my review of the Ledger Nano S by clicking on the link in the video description below. Hi there guys, and welcome to the latest episode of the Cryptoverse, your regular dose of news and commentary on Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, and blockchains. I'm your host, Chris Coney. Now today is the 29th of March 2017. So let's get into the market roundup and then we'll get right into the interview for today. So for the market roundup, we head over to coinmarketcap.com as we always do. So Bytecoin, that's Bytecoin, not Bitcoin. So I checked CoinMarketCap last night and Bytecoin was showing a 700% gain for the day. And this has now readjusted itself to 229% gain, which is in between yesterday's episode of the Cryptoverse and today's, so that was a true 24-hour cycle. But it made me think, what on earth is going on for these lesser-known coins that are suddenly rocketing into the top 20? This isn't the first time this has happened recently. And I've been passing them off as just some random freak events, but I'm now starting to really wonder what the hell's going on here. Like, is there a pattern? Is this just random? Or is there a common cause to this? I honestly don't know, so let me know in the comments below if you've got any insights. One thing Bytecoin has got going for it though, in terms of its economic model and its technology, is no transaction fees. That's kind of interesting. Bytecoin itself isn't anything new though. I've known about Bytecoin for a while. It's been around for a good while, which makes me even more suspicious as to what's going on here. The one thing I will say though is that the supply of Bytecoin is a little wild. 182 billion coins, making the price of each coin only a tiny fraction of a penny. But that's that. And poor old PivX has slipped out of the top 20 now, and it's sitting at just 64 cents a coin, down 1.2% today. It's just outside the top 20 there at 21st place. Let's have a look at Dash. Dash has got itself to $83.45. That's still a good $16 down from its previous home at $100. That's not the death spiral that I think many people were expecting though, down from 100 to 83. And then Monero comes out as the biggest winner in the top 10, having gained 6.4%, leaving Monero at $19.58. Now actually, Iconomy, if I scroll down a bit further here, Iconomy wins out as the overall biggest winner in the top 20 with a 21.2% gain, putting it at 55 cents a coin. I keep reading bits and bobs about Iconomy every time it gets my attention. And the stuff I read about it today kind of caused me to think, well, is Iconomy going to become a decentralized eToro, but for crypto? If you're a fan of Iconomy, then please let me know in the comments below if you think that comparison of mine in eToro for crypto is accurate. So today I bring you an interview that I recorded yesterday with Paul Worrall, who is the founder and CEO of Zonafide. Now, Zonafide is a decentralized app built on Ethereum. Now, the way this interview came about was that Paul was watching the Cryptoverse one day, and I was giving Ethereum a hard time, like I do sometimes, and I was asking, where are the real-world apps? Are there even any out there? And then Paul promptly posted a comment saying, yes, there was some real Ethereum apps, and he was actually developing one of them. So I had a look at the material that they sent over about their app, and then I decided to have Paul on the show. Now, Zonafide itself is an app that makes sure that activities relating to the important things in your life are actually approved by you and or by someone that you trust. It's not as exciting and as glamorous as many of the Ethereum apps that are being proposed, but I think that's a good thing. Zonafide is a grown-up app for grown-up problems such as identity theft, cybercrime, fraud, and so on. Now, the way Zonafide is approaching the problem requires a bit of a mental shift, which is why I let this interview run longer than I normally would. And because it requires this different way of thinking, I didn't really want to cut it short and then leave something important out. So with that, I give you Paul Worrall. So I'm here today with Paul Worrall from Zonafide. Paul, welcome to the Cryptoverse podcast.
Thank you very much, Chris. It's amazing that I'm actually listening to the voice.
Yeah, so I've got to say, we just had a little pre-show preamble there when we were talking about that.
Yes.
Yeah. Following on from the preamble we had there, we were just about to get into a chat about, there's a video on your YouTube channel of you being interviewed at the Blockchain Money Conference and talking about when the project started and how it took a bit of a pivot when you discovered Ethereum. So can you tell us that story?
Yes, I can. First of all, the beard's gone, by the way, if anybody sees that, you know, started to grow it again. But yes, so the project that we're working on, Zonafide, was not really inspired by blockchain at the time. It was because we'd actually experienced some form of identity theft ourselves. So we were, and I felt I could create a product that would solve that problem. So I'd already invested quite a bit of time with crypto technology, but using more conventional approaches. And then Selena, my partner in the business, she started visiting a lot of financial services conferences and started to hear about blockchain. And she kept saying, you really should have a look at it. So last February, I was finally persuaded to do that. And, you know, the underlying paradigm around the technology, it's so well thought out from a developer's point of view. It was really quick for me to engage with. And within a month, literally, I'd thrown away all the stuff that I'd invested my time in.
Within a month of discovering Ethereum, you thought, wow, we're transitioning to this technology, right?
Yeah, I had transitioned, actually.
You had, okay.
So I abandoned the product that I'd created, and I moved across to Ethereum, and it's a testament to the thought behind it that over the last year that I've used it, I haven't had to give Ethereum itself too much thought. I've just focused on the product that we're developing, the DApp, and the problem that I'm trying to solve for our customers.
Indeed. So let's get on to that. This is what I always preach on the Cryptoverse. You might have heard me. I'm always talking about, because people invest in cryptocurrencies. So the primary question I encourage people to ask is, like, how does the token acquire value? And that typically comes from what problem does the project solve? So can you give us the answer to that question? Like, what problems does the Zonafide app aim to solve in the world?
Okay, that's quite a broad thing. So I'll try to be really focused. The first thing I'll do is just say we haven't decided yet whether we will have our own token. Okay. The product itself will work with just Ethereum itself. Okay. But basically, we had a lot identity theft happen to us, various forms of cybercrime, and because of my background, a lot of people were coming and telling me about this problem. Okay, so when you actually step back and say, well, you know, where does this problem actually come from? It's the way in which people have to interact with organizations. Okay, so at the moment, they might actually pass them a secret, like a password. They pass them some information about themselves, and then once that's all qualified, you can pretty much do anything you want. So in this whole identity theft, cyber security or crime space, obviously technology makes it incredibly easy to get hold of people's information, to potentially get the username and the password, and do the attacks en masse, and the attackers can be anywhere in the world. Okay, so that's kind of the core problem that I started with, and I stepped back and said, okay, let's have a really good look at this, and we arrived at three core principles that the product's based on. So the first one is people. So for everybody that had been a victim, there was always someone else that said, I knew they wouldn't do that. So we felt if we could somehow get other people in a very easy way to lend, you know, that sort of over the shoulder look at what people were doing, that would help. So our product's all about helping people work together to stop fraud. Okay, so
can I pick you up on that? So you say, sure. People say, like, I would never do that. So is this where they hear about someone who has been defrauded and they go, well, how silly of them. I would never do that.
Not quite. It's closer to home than that. It really is about getting things close to home. So it's one particular incident we had was with mobile phones. Our daughter ended up with 5 mobile phone contracts in one day.
Okay.
Right. And of course, she's away at university, and the letters and everything come home, and Selena looks at the letters and said, what's going on here? I know that she wouldn't have taken out all these mobile phone contracts.
Right.
But that's after the fact. That's when it's too late. Mm-hmm. And then it takes like 3 to 5 years of unwinding all of that to prove that it wasn't you that took the contract out. You know, and I think it's only in the last year or so that we've stopped getting bailiff letters for outstanding debts with some of these phone companies. Okay, so if we could take that watchful eye, so that Selena, my partner, earlier on in the cycle can spot that, hold on, these things are happening and I know Hannah wouldn't be doing that, and maybe give her a call and say, you know, why are you doing this, and capture it right at the beginning. Okay, so that's what we're about. That's the kind of working together we're looking to do. There's slightly more advanced aspects of it, which I'll come to in a bit, rather than preempting myself. But it's literally all about your friends and your family, your colleagues and people you know being involved in assuring that an activity you're about to do, or assuring someone on the counterparty to an activity, assuring them that, yes, it's generally the case that this person that I know is going to carry out an activity.
Right. So in that example, it would be the point at where you sign up for the 2nd, 3rd, 4th or 5th mobile phone tariff.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So just to extend the explanation slightly. So yes, you're going to, let's say it's something more straightforward, like you're going to change your overdraft limit with your bank. Okay, so effectively you've already said with your bank you're Zonafide, right? Mm-hmm. So we're hoping obviously they understand this product and how to respond to it. So you basically say that if I ever change my overdraft, I want a Zonafide activity. I want you to check it and verify it, that it's not just me, but it's also my partner that has acknowledged that that's a genuine activity, right? So I call up the bank, they know I'm Zonafide, I want to change my overdraft facility, and they go, okay, well, you've got that protected with Zonafide, I see, so we need to see that your partner's also acknowledged it. Well, just having that extra step, if you can imagine compromising just one person, which is what happens today, to actually try and compromise another person as well, right, is right. Yeah, a massive. So if you imagine adding another person, then it'd be even bigger. Yes. And so we are looking for a slight change of behaviour where people start to recognise when there are activities that they do that are vulnerable, and they ensure that they're protected them with Zonafide. And we've got some very clear use cases using what we call authoritative acknowledgers. Yes. That make it much clearer how the product can grow it from an enterprise perspective.
Yes, indeed. I like this.
So that was just the people working together. That's people. The second thing, though, is that everybody sort of talks about protecting information. Make sure you don't leak your information. I think that battle's lost, right?
True.
Everything we're getting in the home, every device, even what happened last week, and with Sunday, the Home Secretary saying they want to try and avoid encryption.
So people don't have
encryption. Yeah, okay. So the push to not have for information to be accessible it's too late, that battle. So we said, let's not focus on that. Let's focus on stopping the activities themselves happening. So let's stop people acting on the information. And by having that focus, it is genuinely the case that we came up with different novel and innovative approaches to how we build our product, okay? And then the third point is where Ethereum came in, and that's why my previous technology had a problem. I'd spoken to a lot of big organizations about how they could accept these notices that we were providing, and I was looking for what we call a transport technically. How can they access these things, and there's no way they would want anything anymore over email. Most people want to shut down their email servers, right? And there wasn't really anything else. So do you know the number one advantage of Ethereum, besides obviously the smart contracts and the cryptography, the number one advantage is just this universal accessibility. So because most organizations are watching blockchain, it's much easier to say, okay, we've got this technology, this is what it does, this is how it provides you with value and reduces costs and incidents of fraud, etc. But most importantly, they're starting to think of it as something that's universally accessible, that they can't really say no to.
Right.
Just like they won't say no to having a website anymore.
True. Absolutely true. Or live chat or whatever it is. Interesting that this is going to protect both the user and these institutions, because to my mind, typically the fraudsters succeed by successfully impersonating some sort of organization, which is, to my understanding, is where this authoritative, what do you call it? Party acknowledger comes in, right?
Yeah.
And I remember another story you told about, it was someone outside of the UK, a company, probably professional fraudsters, and they called up and managed to convince a customer that they were British Telecom and that there was a problem with the router, it was faulty, we're going to ship you a new one and we'll also pay you compensation. They got the bank details and then were able to extract funds from the account. Trouble was that because they were outside of the legal system, there wasn't much of a recourse.
Exactly.
So that was a great story for me, because that was a direct use case where British Telecom would have been that acknowledger to say, yes, we are calling you. Yes, we have verified that your router is broken. Yes, we are going to send you a new one. And yes, we're going to pay you compensation. And that would all be cryptographically signed to prove it was them.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah. Yes. And just to give you a simple way to explain that is that we do advise the public now that when they do a transaction online, they always check for the little padlock at the top to make sure it's over HTTPS. Yes. Is it right? So our product is almost the same. So you can advise people and say, look, if someone's contacting you claiming from BT, BT will use Zonafide. So you need to expect them to have sent you what's called a Zonafide activity. Right. And when you look at that, the app on your phone will tell you, just like when you use a web browser, that this is generally coming from BT.
Okay. So would they send that activity ahead of placing the call to you?
Yes. I mean, these activities, they are technically a smart contract.
Yeah.
They're little smart contracts on the blockchain. And obviously they have an address. So our app, when you use it and you create an activity, one of the things that it does is enable you to share that activity over any form of messaging, because it's perfectly safe to do so, right, Chris? I mean,
it's a public address.
It's a public address. We know the blockchain's public, but what's great is no one can change the state of it other than the people that are cryptographically sort of permissioned to do so.
Right.
So, in fact, one of the problems we've got when we explain the product to people, they say, yeah, but it's public. We're supposed to provide the data. And I go, yeah, but this is where Birmingham University are helping us, right? Because you've got all these laws around data privacy and confidentiality that have evolved in a different era, right? Even though people think they're modern, they're actually from a different era of technology. Right. But what does it mean when the thing that protects you is actually public?
Well,
right?
the data itself isn't public, is it? It's just the activity, the activity's address, which, unless you know who that address belongs to, you can't personally identify anybody from it, can you?
Actually, that's a really good point. We don't store data in the smart contract. Okay. Right. So the information that people can get, they can infer the time, they can try and find out who those people were that are involved in the activity, because it's just their public addresses that are obviously recorded. But you're right, we don't store any actual data in this activity on the blockchain, but people could store information on the blockchain, and there are situations where that information is actually a public record. So some of our relationships, such as with local authorities, we've already had this discussion with them, which the record that they are acknowledging as an authoritative acknowledger is actually a life event, like getting married, which is a public record anyway. Okay,
yes.
so our product right now definitely doesn't store anything in the activity at all, but we actually have the opposite pressure from some of our first go-to-market strategies, that they want the record to be public because it's a statutory obligation to be public.
And when we say public in that way, we mean kind of like a land registry where the full information of like the address of the property, whether it's listed or unlisted, and then the actual name of the landowner, and that's completely public.
Yes.
Is that the kind of level they want?
Yes. Well, it's they wanted it to be there because they're saying, well, if we acknowledge a name change activity, that's one of the things that we're doing, right? So when you're married, often the newlywed finds it a real pain to call up everybody and provide all the necessary fallible documentation to prove that they've been married, right?
Okay.
And so the first go-to-market product relationship we've got with local authorities across England and Wales is that when someone gets married, they can create an activity in our app. They present the activity after they've been married, and the registrar will simply acknowledge it as an authoritative acknowledger, and then they can share that activity over any medium with as many of their service providers as they want. And then the service provider literally just checks that it is signed, if we want to use an old term, or acknowledged in our language, by a known registrar. Okay. And that's sufficient for them to meet the check that they normally have. Often they want to either see a copy of a marriage certificate or the original marriage certificate. And the irony in that is you could go into any local authority, into any registry office, and actually ask for anybody's marriage certificate. And yet companies use that as evidence that you are the person.
Yes, I was going to say that actually. With the current telephone verification systems, like where either the bank calls me or I call the bank, they say, am I speaking to the account holder or the bill payer or whatever? And all you really need to be is the same gender to verify that it's a male or a female voice, and be of age to plausibly be the age of the account holder. And I'm like, what is that? And then what do they ask you for? Things like telephone PIN. But all of that is easily to capture, and then easy to pose as someone else, thus identity theft.
Exactly. Do you know, we're learning so much. We had an incident, well, most of the incidents are with our community or even our family, right? There's so much going on. So we had an incident where we suddenly got a massive bill from Thames Water.
Okay. And
I thought, why? And when we tracked it down, it was because someone had made a mistake with where the house they were moving to.
Okay.
And they called up and cancelled the Thames Water. They said, where are you moving to? And they had automatically changed the account holder. They closed our account and changed it to the new account holder who was not moving into our property. It was a mistake. Right. And they then went and looked at our whole bill for 10 years, decided to recalibrate it, cancel all our payments, decide on what the payment should be, and it was an £800 one-off charge for an adjustment. And that was a mistake as well. And when we contacted them about it, they said, well, we don't check our identity. We just trust people.
Well, yeah, that works until it doesn't.
Exactly.
You know.
So there's just so many examples I could give you. So when it comes to the product from, the scam you just said with BT, when you explained it, it sounded like it was just one odd character, but that's actually companies set up in offshore regions, right, where the employees are actually understand BT support processes because they're often done in these countries, right? So the employees left BT, they're actually working for these companies en masse, and it literally is an en masse organised, we call it crime, but from their point of view, maybe it isn't crime, okay? So that's where this jurisdictional challenge comes in. So they literally, even I could fall foul to that. I mean, they're very, very realistic. And they know how all the BT processes work. And actually, Chris, that's another issue. because of the way we hold our companies to account here, we force companies to publish information about their errors in their customer services processes and things like that. Is BT down today? We publish this stuff to hold them account.
Service status and that.
Yeah, so service status is also information that these people can use.
Of course.
To do that, right? So that they've got feeds of all this information. Oh, look, we know where I live near Leicester. So, we know Leicester's got a massive BT outage. Start calling these numbers because we're highly likely to persuade people that we're BT.
Of course. And of course, you could even say, if you just like to go to the BT website and put in your postcode, you'll see proof that, in fact, I am telling you the truth. And that might be enough to psychologically trick somebody.
Absolutely, absolutely. So your question was how would BT get the activity across, because the address of the smart contract is public that represents the activity. They just literally push it in any way to the customer via email or text message to their phone, and then our app would pick up that address, and then of course it uses Ethereum and all those cryptographic techniques to actually come back and say, yes, this is BT. Okay. There's another angle to that I could tell you about. It's a lot of organizations are coming to us about the problem of vulnerable people, and a lot of these scams are against people that have got some form of impaired judgment.
Yeah, of course. But just before we move on from the BT example, I do want to hear about that one. So just to close this loop, so BT will push that activity to me, and then when they call me and say, we are BT, I may not have noticed the activity on my phone, but at that very moment when they call me, I say, just a second, Paul. I pull my phone out, I open my Zonafide app, and there's the activity verified from BT. So I can, and that's where the fraudster gets stopped in their tracks completely, because if they call and there isn't an activity from BT on there, one or two possibilities: they're a fraudster, or BT forgot to push me the activity before they called. Either way, I'm not talking to you until you do push me the activity.
Yeah, exactly. And because of this universal accessibility of Ethereum, that's the whole point. We've got so much liquidity. You just push somebody the address of our smart contract, and of course our app knows how to interact with our smart contract, and so it just picks it up. It accesses this blockchain, and BT would have written to the blockchain. They would have. They don't use the app. The idea is that BT, of course, isn't going to use the app.
No.
We're going to have an enterprise product.
No, they'll just tie it into their CRM or accounting system.
Exactly, into their customer service process. And actually, that's why the app's going to be free. So the app to people is completely free to perform that basic service of creating activities for themselves and sharing them, acknowledging other people's activities, and for that verification process. So you can do that in what we call mutual trust scenarios, all using the phone. But when it comes to an organization pushing these out so that customers can verify them, there'll be a whole set of enterprise products and tools that we use to help them integrate them into the Ethereum platform. So, of course, that's where we hope to build a professional services capability and tools and techniques to do that.
Okay. Right? So those enterprise solutions, you'll charge for those, and that will go to subsidize the average user who doesn't want to be charged for those activities.
Yes, it is the case that the user, and I know you're probably going to ask me about this because the price of ETH has gone up in the last couple of months, right?
Yes.
But it is the case at the moment. To use the app, when you first download it, you go into settings and you have to, it's mostly aimed at Ethereum knowledgeable people at the moment. So they have to put a node address in, which is their route into the Ethereum network that they want to use, whether it's their own test network. It defaults to ours, and people are welcome to use our test network, but obviously at their own risk. But once they've got access to the network, they do need some ETH because every transaction has to be paid for, right? But the idea is and remains that will be really, really small. Okay, I mean 0.0001 pence or something. So, and we've got this whole idea with a lot of our early routes to market that in the newlyweds name change case, for example, the person, when they come to use that feature, they invite people to gift them that because it's part of getting married, right?
Cool.
So people gift them a few bits of ETH through another tool that we're going to have, and so then they get, say, 10 ETH on their phone, and I'm hoping 10 ETH in our app would last a couple of years worth of activities, because we're not imagining people are using this for everything they do. It's just for the important things they do.
Right. Yeah. Where it's because obviously the higher the risk, the higher the incentive to spend that fraction of a penny to verify the activity.
Yes. Yeah, and so I'm hoping like 10 ETH will last a long time, and the app does allow people then to push, if they're asking someone to become an acknowledger and they want to incentivize them, they can push a bit of ETH to them, 1 or 2 ETH, to start them off.
I was going to say, if I were one of these organizations looking for a competitive advantage, I might even consider reimbursing the customer for the activities fees that they use or something like that. But of course, I was thinking there, like, because you said the app is free, meaning download it for free, use it for free. But I was just going to get onto, so how does the user pay for the Ethereum transactions? But you beat me to it by saying the user would need some Ether in their wallet. And it's not as if a third party can pay the fee for them, because that's just not how it works. They would have to have it in their wallet. So that's perhaps where the idea came to me that, okay, maybe the organization, BT or whoever it is, or me, would reimburse the customers for that. Because if the organization sees enough value in fraud prevention and the cost savings of that, maybe a few $100s a month in Ether to give out to their customers to pay for these activity transactions might just be worth it.
Yes, actually we have thought of that. So,
I'm sure you have.
Yeah,
but that's just where my mind went.
Yeah. So the whole idea is to, I mean, I feel if people are interested in ETH and they're invested in it and they want to see, obviously, it's give a return on investment, it is products like ours that are genuinely finding something that there's a customer base there with a real problem that they value quite highly.
Yes.
Right? It's nothing to do with cryptocurrency or anything. They just think this is a valuable thing to protect or to do. So, and then there's a little ecosystem around them where we're trying to drive the movement of ETH. Right. Okay. Yeah. So that will drive up demand for ETH from the general public.
Yes.
That's our goal.
Mm-hmm. The thing is, with these activities, they're not one-offs. The marriage one might be, but there are a lot of, I mean, you're talking about activities which happen all the time. And say, I don't know, there's all kinds of transactions that I might want to verify. Say things like, if I wanted to, I don't know, change my direct debit with British Telecom or something like that. Something like that, some change on my account like that. Those are maybe some of the activities I might want to sign for. But what I'm getting at is there's so many of them and they're happening so frequently that it creates like an ongoing demand for these little ETH transactions. Is where I was trying to go with that.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. And if we get into the technology side of Ethereum, some people are saying, well, is it really able to cope with that level of transactions? Mm-hmm. Right? And there are other issues. I mean, you implied, what's the issue with the price? The fact that the price of ETH has gone up and things like that.
Right.
A point that I was going to make there that I forgot was it's not actually the price of ETH that hits people. It's the price of what's called gas. Okay.
Well, it's the same thing, though, isn't it? Because I thought for a while there, I thought that was an internal currency that was pegged to Ethereum.
No, so what gas is, without getting too technical too quickly, but what gas is the cost of the computation.
Yes.
And that is priced in ETH.
Right.
So that means there's a couple of dimensions here. So let's say if ETH starts to get quite expensive, and then suddenly it's not economically viable to use our app.
Yep.
That would be impacting everybody who was trying to use the Ethereum network. Okay. Yes. So really that has to be a change of the gas price. So the network itself that effectively we're paying to give us this decentralized cryptographic consensus, that's what these payments are for, is to protect people.
Yes.
Okay. And when our app is being used, the computational cycles they consume gas, and the gas has a price. So that there is this ability for the network to say, okay, well, we will reduce the price of gas. Okay. So, the other side of it is that I might have to become more efficient in how I create transactions. So at the moment, we created the product, never really thought about that. But let's say there's 3 different interactions with the Ethereum network, and I find if I collapse them into one interaction, it'll be one transaction, right, and that'll be a third of the price. Mm-hmm. So they're the 2 dimensions to that problem of Ether, increasing in value. Okay. It's us changing how our product works, make it more efficient, and also the network deciding to be fairer on the gas price.
Okay, I see. That, to me, that is like an internal currency, though, because you're not actually paying for the transaction in Ethereum. There is kind of like, because it would, right, this is one of the criticisms that I've thrown at Ethereum in the past. I thought, okay, check this out. Say you've got an app like Zonafide, and it's paying these fractions of a penny for these transactions. They're almost negligible. But then the price of Ethereum rockets up and potentially could put that app out of business because it can no longer afford what were microtransactions, which are now costing maybe 50 cents each because of the price of Ether. But of course, I guess the Ethereum developers have thought of this and somewhat disconnected the computational power from Ether by creating a middleman, which I see as like almost a virtual currency called gas, which can flex. The exchange rate can flex. It's almost like you can almost debase that internal gas currency to keep the internal inflation in check. Am I making sense?
Yeah, I mean, as I say, I've been so lucky with Ethereum because it just works for me. Okay. I have been, so I've just used it and focused on our product, and I am assuming that it is in the interest of all of us working with Ethereum that we don't make it so expensive products can't work.
Yes.
So that's the key thing. But it is the case that in the technology, there is a metric, a little formula for deciding, well, this is going to be the price of each computation. Mm-hmm. Okay. And it's the computation that's the gas, if you like.
Yes.
That's the resource that gets processed. Yeah. And that has a price set against it. So there is something, and I believe in the last couple of months, we started setting up some more Ethereum nodes in our test network, and we started playing around with things like that. But at the moment, we sort of stopped. So I wouldn't say I'm an expert on that myself yet. And in reality, I don't expect to be, because the whole idea of Ethereum is that I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing now without investment, and we're completely self-funded, because I'd have to build a massive infrastructure to replicate what Ethereum's giving me.
Yes.
I'd have to have all kinds of auditing on the security of how my product worked and etc. But all I have to do is focus on the problem that I'm solving, how to communicate how we're solving the problem, and getting the product accessible for people to start to use.
Well, absolutely. I mean, that at the end of the day is the value of Ethereum. It lowers kind of the barrier to entry into this world of apps, because there's a kind of a trade-off. What do you want to do? Do you want to develop your own bespoke blockchain to run Zonafide, and the multi-million-dollar budget you need for that, and all the complexity and so on, and obviously the high risk, much smaller chances of success? Or do you think, okay, never mind the tech, I just want to focus on solving the problem, and then effectively outsource the cryptography and the distributed computing and all that sort of stuff to Ethereum? And then, granted, you might inherit this thing we just talked about, having to have the externality of the fluctuating gas price, but hey, small price to pay. And if all you have to do is rework your contracts every now and again to make them more efficient to deal with a fluctuating gas price, I think that's preferable to the multi-million-dollar budget for your own bespoke blockchain.
Absolutely, yeah. And there's just one other use of the product that. So you had me mentioned this whole thing about an enterprise passing an activity to a customer, mm-hmm. and then we've talked about a customer passing an activity to an enterprise. Yeah. Yes. There's one other high-profile thing that's been going on, which you might have heard about, which is, I think they called it the Friday afternoon fraud. So it's when a solicitor.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah. When on Friday afternoons, that's when most house purchases go through, right?
Buying homes.
Yeah, before 12 o'clock. Yeah, it's Friday after. It's Fridays. It's 12 o'clock. Everything has to happen. The keys exchange for 12 o'clock. So there's always a mad panic. So that's been regularly exploited lately.
Mm-hmm.
And there was someone that was a solicitor sent an instruction to a buyer to make a payment.
Okay. Oh, and, solicitor for the non-British viewers. Can you tell them what that is, please?
A lawyer or a conveyance?
Okay, there we go.
It's generally a conveyancing scammer. It's as a general term. Yeah. But yeah, so they sent instructions of who to pay for the property to the buyer, and then the buyer's told the bank to obviously make the payment.
Okay.
And what's happening is because people are studying how this happens, that they're doing a phishing attack and changing the account that the payment's been made to. And there was a buyer in the last couple of months, they lost 65 or 69,000 pounds. And both the solicitor and the bank said it's not our problem.
So they're exploiting the kind of the stressed state that the person is in. And correct me if I'm wrong. What is this? I get an email saying, "Can you please transfer the money to this bank account?" And that's been spoofed.
Yeah, and solicitors will use ordinary open email.
Right.
I'm getting on now, and I was involved in the original FreeServe and
I remember FreeServe.
etc. And we were building a separate email platform that actually had PGP in it and full security, and they shut us down because people realised the value in getting the public to.
They realised the value, so they shut it down. Well, because it was a threat.
They realised that everyone realised that the value in email was not charging people to use email, but was it in them spilling out all this information that they could sell.
Yes, I'm with you.
Right.
I'm with you.
So now everybody just uses it, and although that you could secure email, most ordinary people in the public don't know how to set up PGP in their email, and they're not able to on online email services.
They're leaving that to the Hotmails and whoever they use. They're just trusting them.
Yeah, and of course, it doesn't work.
And not really, because there is no security built into the email protocol. Any security has to be laid on top of it.
Exactly.
Exactly.
So, and the way you do it is very cumbersome and awkward anyway. But what they're doing is they're sending this email. I think it's not that it's getting intercepted, but there's people that understand what the email looks like, what the solicitor's doing, and they literally send an email that looks like it's come from the solicitor, and it's so accurate according to the transaction that's happening, which is often public again.
Right.
It's a public transaction. It's so accurate that it's very easy for someone to make the mistake of thinking that's real.
And as long as they get their email sent first before the real one, and the payment goes to them, that's it. That's all they need to do. Then when the second one turns up, the legitimate one, you're like, I've already sent the money.
Yeah, exactly. So the Law Society in the UK has been aware of this, and it's put out some guidance. And the guidance is ridiculous. They're not saying to sisters, these are your options. This is how you could possibly protect your client. They're saying, ring the number. They're telling them to do all these strange checks, which in the stress at that moment with the Friday afternoon of a property exchange, it's really hard for people to do.
Adding steps to the process, that's the last thing you want to do.
Exactly. And all the solicitor has to do now, today, go to Google Play, if you've got an Android phone, type Zonafide, download it, and then with the customer, the client, they say, look, you download this app as well, and I'll give you an activity. Here's the activity. Share it with them. It can be, if you're in front of each other, it's just a QR code share.
I was going to say, how do you pair the devices, but you've just told me.
Yes. So when you create an activity, one of the things you can do is look at a summary of all its attributes. And one of the things that you can get from that view is the QR code representing the address. Right. So and then the app has the ability to scan that straight in. So you can just do it from one phone to another. But you can, I've already said, you can also send it safely over any other medium because it's cryptographic, it can't be compromised, right? So if the solicitor wants to, they can send that via an email, knowing that is safe, right? If that's how they do things. But they could download the app now, say to the customer, look, I'm going to give you this activity. The app allows you to verify when it's active, and don't do anything until it's active. And the second thing is when you get the payment instruction, the activity will tell you if that instruction is correct according to the activity. So there's two things going on there. One, don't do anything until the activity is live.
Yes.
And second, don't do anything other than the instruction that the activity tells you is the right instruction.
So that's like including the specific numbers in the transaction. And like, do you hash that?
Yeah.
To make
it's hashed.
Okay.
Exactly.
So if the data had been changed, you'd know about it.
Yes, yeah, it's a simple thing. You cut and paste it into the verifier view of the app,
right?
Which we're going to make really easy, and then it just goes tick that text, which is pay this bank, this sort code, this account number, right? That will match, and the activity will say yes, that is what I am for.
Okay.
And if I go back to what I said earlier, I said we focus on activities.
Mm-hmm.
That decision. That feature was possible because we were focusing on activities and not information.
Right.
If we were focusing on protecting information, we might not have come up with that idea.
Mm-hmm.
By focusing on the activity, it freed us to not worry about the information. So even though the information could be compromised,
yes,
if you use the activity to verify the information, you don't have to worry about it being compromised.
That's true, or public or whatever, because it's when you want to change something that you have to kind of verify it with the multiple parties.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
See, this is good. And now I can see what you mean now about the breadth of the application of this kind of thing. Because the question is, when could you do with verifying that an activity was genuine? Well, the answer to that question is, how long have you got?
Yeah, exactly. We've got so many scenarios, and one thing that's been interesting about this project is it starts off with your friends who don't believe, they think you're mad,
right?
Then they experience some form of fraud.
Oh, they think you're mad for wanting to use this.
Yeah, okay. Well, mad for approaching the problem in this way.
Okay,
right?
Okay.
Oh, why would I do that? Why would I want to have someone else acknowledge what I do? Oh, I don't want people to know what I do. Right. And you think, well, there are some things that you're doing that, you can tell your partner, tell your daughter, there are vulnerable people that have carers,
mm-hmm.
And things like that. So if you start thinking about, well, I'm going to carry out this activity and I'm using Zonafide, which is very easy to use. Is it really that hard to just at the breakfast table say to your partner, oh, by the way, I'm going to increase my overdraft today. Can you acknowledge this? And you just touch phones, and they have then transferred their acknowledgement. I try and avoid identity, Chris, because that's a whole new area.
Yep.
But they basically transfer a separate entity, acknowledgement to this activity. And when the activity gets passed to the verifier already knows it's checking that for these type of activities that it's normally the partner, right, that should have acknowledged, or one of the siblings or a child,
I see.
You see what I mean?
It's a far cry from when the two married couples the husband and wife had to both sign the check before that they could spend from the account. It's a far cry from that. That
is a very, very important point, Chris. So now some people say, yeah, but you can get multi-sig on these accounts.
Right.
Why do we say acknowledgement and not signature? Okay.
Why is that?
So we have looked at the law, and when you say signature, it implies accountability.
Right.
So when you talk about multi-signature on a checkbook, the people are jointly and severably liable for any issue.
Right. I see.
So our product doesn't do that. Our product uses people's knowledge that they know somebody, right, and the cryptographic ability to then share these public addresses of the people involved. Okay. But when somebody acknowledges someone's activity, they're not signing a check, they're not opening a joint account.
Right.
There's no accountability in the conventional sense.
I see. Yeah.
Okay. They're doing their friend or family member a favour, or if they're a professional, such as a solicitor that's providing an acknowledgement to something, or the registrar doing it for a bereavement or a wedding or something like that, they're just lending a circumstantial statement saying the circumstances that you, the verifier, need, I am endorsing, but they're not saying I am responsible for the activity. which most dual signature things with banks normally make people liable.
Right. The difference is all you're doing is giving your say that it's authentic, that the activity is authentic.
Exactly. Right. We actually use the vocabulary genuine.
Sorry.
Because and that's only because we have to have a consistent vocabulary.
And actually, authentication is a technical term.
And it gets technical when you use authentic or authorized or signature. Signature becomes legal.
Like cryptographic signature, perhaps,
Yeah, the same thing if we say certify, right?
Right.
Now, if we say certification in a cryptographic way, I think it's in the Telecommunications Act 2000, it actually says in there that if anybody provides certification, right, they have to prove that their company is capitalized, that means has sufficient money to compensate for the maximum loss of any customer where that certification would fail.
Wow.
So we don't say certification in the same way.
Right. Not like an SSL certificate, which we mentioned earlier on, which they're backed by insurance in case you lose data and it leaks out of an SSL. There's usually like £250,000 plus worth of compensation available there because they call them a certificate.
Yes, and it goes up to a root certifying authority, and whoever wants to be the root certifying authority, has to have enough insurance to cope with this ultimate loss. But I think we all know actually that whole process is broken anyway. So although we go around telling people to trust the lock at the top, there are most of the time you can trust it, but there are situations where maybe they haven't necessarily qualified the certifier as much as they should have done in the chain.
That's a good point.
Yeah. So we had part of my original solution was looking at using what's called X509 certificates, which is how they do things on the web. I was looking at using that in my original product. Yeah. But what was great about Ethereum again is that you don't have to worry about that. That whole problem of identity certification is actually a complementary partner. We don't have to worry about that. Ours is mutual sharing of addresses, so you actually know that you've shared the addresses, right? And you've already qualified the people against your own processes that they are who they are. Right. So when you receive the address, you've already certified it yourself. That's how our product works at the moment.
Okay.
But we are looking at building a partnership community of people that want to become oracles for certifying. Okay. So with the registrars, for example, we've already got those agreements with local authorities. So we will become an oracle for certifying that registrars that are acknowledging our activities are who they are. And we'll have a whole onboarding process that manages when they leave and they start at the local authority, etc. But there are lots of other opportunities, such as with solicitors, where someone else who's got that real relationship with them, maybe via the law society, might be interested in setting up an oracle for identity or role certification for certain public addresses that will be used in conveyancing or something like that.
Right, I see.
So and then in our app, people will be able to just choose for what type of activity they mainly are involved with, which oracle they want to use for the authoritative acknowledger certification.
That's cool. There's one more use case that I'd like you to walk through before we finish today. You were going to talk about like the vulnerable people and the carers. Could you walk us through that use case?
Okay, so the best thing to do to make that short is to just build on that BT.
Okay.
So I was saying that most people that end up victims of this kind of scam are vulnerable people, with some form of impaired judgment. So in that case, what we envisage is that those people normally have a care worker or someone like that maybe that my mum actually has a care worker like that, and they're very close, right? Yeah. And he's been working with her for many, many years. So what happens there is when, say, BT contract with a vulnerable person, one of the things they offer is this ability to have another acknowledger that will confirm that, anybody from BT, the support desk, talking to them it's a genuine activity, right?
Right. So you set the scene a bit clearer. So this would be like an elderly person who still lives in their own home rather than in a nursing home, and they have a carer visit them maybe once or twice a day to help them with whatever they need help with. But the elderly person might not be the sharpest, mentally. So they may be easily duped, right? Potentially from a BT impersonator or anyone from the electricity company or whatever, right?
Yeah, or BT themselves, right? Maybe BT
that's a good point. You're mis-selling.
BT, they're doing an upsell.
That's a good point.
You need the latest Sky package that's double the money.
Baffle them with science,
and I have all of these even that use case absolutely described down to a T for when we're talking to BT, right? Mm-hmm. And because they do that, some people find, actually there's a case where someone called up and said, I've got a £50 charge. Where's this come from? What's the number that was dialed to create this £50 charge? And what BT do is to go, we don't know what you called. We can't tell you.
Okay.
Right? So they say, but I'll tell you what we'll do is we'll give you a discount on a 3-year contract for Sky Sports. Yeah.
Right.
And that will compensate you for your loss. And they actually do that. Okay. It's a actual sales tactic. Okay. So, don't mean to be too negative on BT. That's unfair, right? But it is the case. They do that. And we know other organizations do that, that type of thing. So yes, what happens there is that when the contract is taken out, they can volunteer this type of service with them. And possibly the care worker or the family member is advising them on what phone package to have anyway.
Yes.
Right, and help them with the complexity of that. And at that point, they can say, well, you can use Zonafide if you like. Do you want to volunteer a second acknowledger or another acknowledger for any activities we do? Right. And so they then volunteer the care workers acknowledgement, right? And I know some viewers will say, it's much more complicated than that because care workers change on a daily basis. We have thought about all that as well, right? So, but basically they then volunteer an address. And what happens is when BT go to call this customer on their customer record, it says that they're Zonafide and it shows an additional acknowledger that's required for certain activities with this customer. And because it's a blockchain, because it's universally accessible, they're able to push out a request, which we'll probably use Whisper for this, which is Ethereum's messaging service, push out a request to that acknowledger to say, this is BT, right? Yes. And we're going to talk to this person about this new thing. Could you acknowledge it, please?
Right.
And then, of course, the carer, when they visit the customer, can say, do you really want to do this?
Like, what are you doing with this TV package? You don't need all that.
Yeah. Do you really need that or not? Now, of course, I always tell the tale that if you go back to 1950s when the Americans came over to the US and taught us how to sell things, right? The number one thing that they created and instilled in our culture is to get people on their own. And that is pervasive through our whole society now. Whatever you do, if you're selling a guy a car, take his partner somewhere else, to distract them. Okay, so all of our processes are actually based on getting people on their own. And what we're really doing is going back to that work together community thing. So with carers and our problem with, the elderly, I just think this is going to grow and grow and grow. We've really got to figure out how we put that trust back into how companies are working with customers, and because a good 40% probably are going to have impaired judgment at some point in the next 30, 40 years, right, including us.
Sure.
So I think we'll see that our care working, our social mechanism around people is going to evolve. And it'll be almost unrecognizable compared to what it is today. And I think technology will play a really important part of that. And I'd like to think that our app, once we get the message out there, starts to have people think differently, how you can have, these kind of people helped.
Absolutely. And with that example we just had there, I thought it would act as somewhat of a deterrent. If I was an unscrupulous sales agent working for some blue chip organizations and I want my commission, the moment I realize the customer is Zonafide, my heart might sink because I know it's not going to happen. Because I know the carer is going to come round or the third party acknowledger is not going to buy it.
Exactly.
So I know I may as well not bother trying to push
exactly.
it.
So a lot of these things, it's not just the technology, Chris, is it? It's that when people become aware of a new way of behaving, it changes behavior.
Yes.
Right? It changes people's consciousness. And I am actually from an investment banking background. I worked in investment banks as a technologist, so a lowly technologist. But I do know that each person is genuinely, moral. But when you get them all together in these big organizations that are global, the behavior becomes immoral. No one person would ever dream of doing some of the things that end up happening in these organizations.
Right. It's like a creeping culture. If there's a commission culture, it kind of just takes over the team.
Yeah, people just behave in ways which they definitely wouldn't do by choice.
Or if they were just one individual actor and asked to do that, they'd be like, no.
Yes. Now, and that's a good point with the app, because if they're looking at a record that says this person's Zonafide got a care worker, they can defer to that, right? And say, look, you can't do that. This person's obviously, you're taking advantage of this person. Right. They've obviously elected to use this product because they need some help making the decision.
Right.
So I can't do what you're asking me to do.
And it would look pretty bad, me as the unscrupulous customer service agent once more, if I have a track record of declined activities because of a third party acknowledger said no, am I misbehaving or something?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's also something I thought about there.
Yes, exactly.
So cool.
So the app is it's available on for Android and iOS. You can go to Google Play and download it from there, Chris. But unfortunately, on iOS at the moment, we're still going through that qualification period with Apple, and they've got some suspicions of anybody, right, who's doing things to do with cryptography.
Right. Okay.
In fact, I thought it was really interesting when we released our app onto Google Play. We never got asked anything about does this product use cryptographic techniques. Okay. Where as soon as you used Apple, it's saying, have you got an export license? You have to attest to the fact that you're not breaking any munitions laws.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. I mean, because obviously cryptography for most of my career was a weapon. In the 90s, if I'd have gone into some countries, I think Argentina's one, with some of the books that I have, I'd be arrested.
Yeah, true. It's like a military technology.
It is. We have to remember that Britain itself, with Mr. Turing, and the Enigma in the Second World War, when that was a cryptographic problem, and in reality, that set the precedent for the fear in government about cryptography.
Yes.
If we haven't been able to break, Enigma, who knows what would have happened in the war. But also, if you watch the recent film about it, even when we did break it, there was suddenly moral dilemmas. And we've got the same moral dilemmas with Ethereum and Bitcoin, everything.
Yes.
Okay. So they had to make decisions. Well, I mean, I'm close to Coventry. So they had to make the decision, well, we'll have to let them bomb Coventry, because if we stop that, they'll know we've broken the code.
I see, yeah.
So there's all kinds of new, I think that the reason blockchain has become so big, so many the governments are interested in it, large organizations are interested in it, is because it's not just technology, it's political, it's economic, and it's social.
Absolutely. Good, that's a good note to end on. So do you want to give out your other contact information if people want to get in touch with you or the project?
Yeah, we're not great on marketing or anything yet, but we've obviously got our website, www.zonafide.net. We've got a Twitter handle, which is not Zonafide. That's some Swedish rock group.
Okay.
It's Zone of Trust. So you can get us on at Zone of Trust. And we've got a Facebook, of course, which is the same thing, Zone of Trust. If you search for that, you'll get us on there. We do have Slack. If people want to email us on info@zonafide.net. We can invite them to join our Slack. If we'd really encourage people to download the app, of course. We just need people to kick us, tell us where our priorities should be. Mm-hmm. We've got a really exciting roadmap going forward, really interesting stuff with hierarchical wallets applied to non-cryptocurrency concepts and stuff like that. But we really need to be addressing what people want. So we've created a product that is general, but as they start to use it, that will help with the priorities. So if people could download the app, experience it, and then get on Slack and give us a kick on there and create some noise for us, that will help us with our priority going forward.
Excellent. Well, given the roadmap and given where you are in the development, if you'd be so kind to come back to us and give us a project update in a little while, would you be willing to do that?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, one thing I'm a developer, so I'll spend months like in a cave, yep. And then I come out not being able to speak, and then after a few months I can speak. I'm just about to go back in a cave, okay. But I will let you know, and as soon as I come out, you can be the first that we talk to.
All right, yeah. Stuff. Well, Paul, thanks for coming up on the Cryptoverse.
Thank you very much, Chris.
So thanks for joining me today, guys. If you liked this episode, hit the like button. If you disliked it, hit the dislike button. Please leave me a comment below with some feedback and get subscribed. And please support the Cryptoverse and boost cryptocurrency adoption by going to cryptoversity.com/podcast and becoming a patron. From just a few dollars a month, you can secure Cryptoversity's future, get unlimited access to all Cryptoversity courses, and access a private patrons-only chat group where you get direct access to me. That is all for today, guys. I'll be back tomorrow with another episode of the Cryptoverse. So until then, it's me, Chris Coney, saying bye for now.